Mindset Podcast. We are your guide as you make your way through life, getting better 1% every day. We believe that life is lived and true victory won through adversity. Nothing easy is ever worth it. We believe in the warrior ethos and support those that choose to walk that path.
What's up, everyone? Wanted to work on this post a little bit with you live today and go through it. I've been on a Musashi, journey. I've been reading the Book of Five Rings over and over and really getting into it. And I wanted to go over what I thought were the top 5 concepts to come out of that book, and then share some thoughts and where I stand on some of this. I think if you haven't read the book, I think you should go out and do that. It's not a huge time-consuming thing to just make your way through it. It is, however, something you could spend a lifetime studying. And I think that if you are a martial artist of any kind, or are the type of person that is introspective or wants to be, or just want to work on your self-improvement, I think it's a great book. A lot of self-described warriors who use that term for themselves have adopted this book and a lot of the teachings in it, and for good reason. If you're unfamiliar with Miyamoto Musashi, I've talked about him before on other episodes here, but he was a Japanese swordsman, philosopher, and a writer who lived in what I would say feudal Japan, 1584, 1645, during the samurai. And he was renowned for his skills in sword fighting because he traveled the countryside of Japan and participating in duels. And then they were essentially duels to the death. And I don't remember the exact number. It's like 60 something, 62 or some number like that he didn't lose. And there's lots of great stories if you just study him. But he later, I want to say, retired, right? He after his last fight, and I think I spoke about that in an episode or so before this one, but he retired and went to this cave where he lived out the rest of his days. I think he was sick. There was something wrong with him, but he wrote the Book of Five Rings. He wrote the Dokkan, another book, but the Book of Five Rings is like the most famous one. It's got the coolest name, but also it's, more accessible, I think. And again, you should get out there and find that book and read it up. And I've linked to a really good, a pretty good, version of this book on Amazon here. The one that's in my personal collection as a collector's item. And it's a really good one with great illustrations and things. In my humble opinion, there's a ton of concepts, and you can disagree with me, but there's these 5 concepts: no mind, the void, 3 modes of attack, or the 3 modes of attack, the way of the sword, and the 5 rings themselves that make up the sections of the book or whatever. All pretty strong concepts that come from this. They're very much worthy of your studying. So let's go through some of this. No mind. This concept, no mind, mushin, in turn, another Japanese term for it, warrior, samurai related term, mushin, no mind, is this concept of the state of being completely focused and free from distraction and emotion on what you're doing while you're doing it. like think of a fight. Having a sole purpose. No mind or mushin is the idea that a martial artist should be able to remain focused and free from distractions or emotions during combat. Means you're fully present. Think about being present. Musashi believed that this state of mind was essential for success in battle, as it allowed the martial artist to respond quickly and decisively to any situation. And to quote something you wrote, the primary thing when you take a sword in your hands is your intention to cut the enemy, whatever the means. Whenever you parry, hit, spring, strike, or touch the enemy's cutting sword, you must cut the enemy in the same movement. It is essential to attain this. So he's talking about in combat with a sword that you are of one. You whatever you're doing has one potential outcome that you're working towards, and everything you do is focused on that one outcome. You know, in that case, it's like, you know, cutting down your enemy, but it could be anything you're doing. It's to have a clear mission, and in your mind, the front of your mind, the back of your mind, whatever, it be the one thing you're focused on in that moment. So much like a fight, you know, if you're distracted or thinking of other things, or, you know, you're trying to do too much or whatever, it's not going to work out in your favor. There is another thing here, another related concept. I want to get this video up. Let me pull this thing up. From Tony Blauer. And I've talked about him before. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Tony Blauer. He it's in this video here with Fight Tips with Shane Faison, which is another great channel that you can go check out. He's got a lot of really awesome, he's been around forever, a lot of awesome fighting tips and stuff. But Tony Blauer is someone I've followed for a while. I've done seminar with him. I've been, not with him, I've been to one of his seminars or workshops or whatever, and he teaches some really interesting way of looking at self-defense. Let me pull this back up, make sure I have the video. Yeah, I want to make sure I get the audio in here. So he teaches this thing called the spear system. But in this particular thing, he's a self-defense expert, right? He's an expert in this world. And he's talking about no mind in terms of self-defense. And there's this concept called training bias. And I've had a lot of instructors talking about this. And it's sort of like, you know, martial artists, we all think, and we all think that we're good at self-defense because we're martial artists, but in reality we have what we call training bias, in that, you know, if I practice karate or if I practice jujitsu and I'm presented with a scenario where I absolutely have to defend myself, I'm probably going to use those things first, or I'm going to use my favorite thing first, or whatever it is, and that might not be the right reaction, right? So, like, for example, if I train, you know, MMA, and I like to box, and I get into a self-defense scenario or whatever, I'm in a bar or whatever, and somebody's messing with me, and I immediately resort to my training and I start punching this person, that might not be the right call at the moment. So let me play this.
Remember, the big mistake that I think the conventional market makes with respect to self-defense is they confuse martial arts with self-defense. Self-defense is the study of douchebaggery in the fucking street, the predator who wants your property, your body, your life, and they don't attack like other martial artists.
Yeah.
And so they're not thinking, oh, this guy's open, I know what I'll do. Put your hand, like, replicate this. I know what I'll do is I'll check his hand here and I'll put my foot here, and now I can hit him because now he can't. Oh, right. And I'll do this and I'll check this here so he can't. Like, they're not doing that. The guy who sees you like that, if you hold this, but here's the difference. Here's the difference and the distinction. If you practiced, where's a focus pad? So get your weight on here, get really natural on that. Feel like you're leaning on, but not too much leaning on this here. And now what I want you to do from this position, while we're talking, I want you to gesture with your right hand, and then I just want you to like fucking smack like palm. Okay. So this will be like my face here. Gotcha. And so you're gonna go like this. You're gonna go, man, I got no money, right? So and you won't do that till I place that there. Okay. So I'm gonna go here like, Aaron, dude, what are you fucking doing in my part of town? Fucking, you gotta pay. So now I'm gesturing. I'm looking at your hands, but you haven't moved. So right now, what I'm doing this is an understanding the psychology of the threat. I'm going, hey man, I fucking told you. Right, but I don't see this as a weapon system. Why? Because who the fuck would stand like that in a dangerous confrontation? You see, like.
So there you go. Let me pull this back up. There we go. So the idea there, or the reason I wanted you to watch that with me was that, he's talking about training for self-defense with no mind, with mushin. He's talking about training for self-defense for these scenarios that you can't interpret, that you can't predict, right? I mean, who trains to fight out of that leaning against the wall stance, right? You are immediately going to resort to what you're comfortable with doing. You're going to resort to your training bias. You're going to, stand in a bladed stance, put your left and right up, and you're ready to rumble, when that is not necessarily going to work out in your favor, particularly from what Mr. Blauer was saying. There's a lot of jokes about like jujitsu people where like there's these funny Instagram posts where the guy breaks in their house and is a jujitsu fighter, so the jujitsu guy immediately sits on their butt and pulls guard, while the guy stands over him and shoots him. I think that's pretty funny too. But anyway, I wanted to point that out. I think that's a great concept that Musashi really he drives home a lot in the book. So everything, it's sort of like the approach that you should take to almost every section throughout the book is this concept of no mind, which is, to take whatever's being taught at face value and to not try to run it through your own personal filter bias, right? Which is really hard to do. It's also, hey, if we all just kind of did that in the world, we'd probably be pretty much better off than we are with a lot of things. So this other thing, the void. The concept of the void, or it's related to mushin, which is the state of being empty and free from preconceived notions and expectations. They're related, except for this, right? The concept of the void or mushin is the idea that the martial artist should be empty and free from preconceived notions or expectations during combat. The void is much more than combat, but Musashi liked to kill people with his sword, so there you go. He believed this state of mind was essential for adaptability and flexibility in battle, and I would say in life. It helps you, like I was saying with what Mr. Blauer was saying about no mind, which is it helps you respond to situations utilizing the things that you've internalized, right, without needing to bring them to the surface. But here's the thing, though. It's not nothing. The void is not emptiness. It's rather a place of potential, a space that can be filled with any number of possibilities. So when you're in the void, or you're using the void, and the void is one of the five rings, right? Let's see, fire, earth, water, air, and void. It is one of them, and it is all of them, and it's none of them, right? It is you in the space where you have access to any of them, but you're not using one in a preconceived notion, right? It's a place of zero expectations, but 100% potential, right? So it's not just emptiness, it's not just nothing, and that's a very Zen thing, and I want you to. if you're listening to this, I would like you to really think about that and to really meditate on that and to think about what that means, to be in a state of nothingness but preparedness at the same time. Right. So let's see. I've got this other video I want to share with you. And this is Tulam, Ronin Tactics. I've been a fan of his for a long time. He's a retired special forces guy, Green Beret. I don't know. I think he was in like Delta Force or something too. I don't know. He's just a supreme badass. But this whole video, I'll link this whole video up, but this particular section, let's just listen.
Kill your enemy, right? Fire is to meet your enemy without fear, right? That comes with a mindset to fight like you already died, to have no fear of death, to ground yourself, right? Another teaching is to ground yourself in the teachings of education in the way of the warrior, right? Wind, and then void. I tell you, void was the hardest for me, because Musashi says that in order to perceive what is actual truth, you must die to everything of yesterday. And I was suffering, after my time in war, and I was very lost. And I read that book, Void. I never understood what that means. How can you die to everything of yesterday to perceive what is? Well, it actually goes back into Taoism, and Confucianism, where, in life, we create a narrative, right? We live in this dream on what is absolute. So what is absolute is the universe. What's absolute is the mountains, stars, moon, God. Mm-hmm. That's absolute truth. But what we place on these absolute is a narrative. A tree is only a tree. But we look at this tree and we say, wow, what a small tree. Mm-hmm. We look at this tree and we say, oh, the tree is not perfect. The tree is perfect. Life is perfect, right? But we throw this narrative. So in life, we come up with a narrative, and we travel through this world with our own narratives. You face a struggle. Either you learn from it, or you repeat this. And when you learn from it, is it really failure? So Musashi, in the book of 5 Rings, it's just that. You must die to your truth in order to see what is actual. And that comes with a lot of practice, right? So for many years I practiced on this, and now I understand, right?
That's incredible, right? Let me do this here. Window. Let's get this tab back up. Yeah, so fascinating stuff, right? It's amazing to me how going into anything in martial arts, but going into anything in life, we work from this place of these preconceived narratives and preconceived stories, and sometimes we tell them to ourselves, and sometimes we listen to other things that shape our beliefs and stuff, and we're not necessarily truly examining things for ourselves or internalizing them to that degree. And to die to your reality, to discover what the real truth is like along the lines of what he's saying, and that's that you have to examine, like truly examine what others are saying is reality before you just accept it as reality, right? That's incredible, particularly for somebody like him who, clearly had some, post-traumatic stress issues from all the literally the war that he was in, and a lot of people have that. They just kind of exist in this place that's high stress or whatever, But anyway, the void, it's a great, very deep concept that pairs well with no mind, with mushin. But whereas and I want to draw a distinct difference. Whereas mushin, or no mind, is it's a state that you utilize, right? You are aware of being able to be in the state, and you utilize it as a tool. Whereas the void is this place of not just emptiness, but it's in this place of not having those preconceived notions, or not having that training bias or whatever, but being a place where you can utilize anything at any point in time and become something. So it's a, probably could be called enlightenment, being in that place. So taking all of the other four rings and bringing them together, it's that moment. Another of the cool concepts that Musashi brings is the three modes of attack. If you are a martial artist, and this can be like art of war type strategy things, but Musashi discusses specifically three different modes of attack in his book: the direct mode, indirect mode, and combined mode. So the direct mode, kin no sin. This is just outright attacking your opponent with everything you have, right? The indirect mode, tai no sin, is when you would, let's say, fake or feint to draw the opponent out, and then you strike, right? Or waiting for your opponent to strike, and then dodging or parrying, and then striking. So, you're not the first, you're not the aggressor, like maybe someone else is the aggressor or whatever, and then you're using that against them. And so then the final one, the combined mode, tai no sin, it's when you and your opponent strike at the same time, right? And you are either faster or more clever or whatever in that instant. So you're either first, you're either second, or you're at the same time. And there are no other modes of attack according to Musashi. Those three things. And if you understand that interplay with attack or action or whatever, and it is that simple, then you can begin to fully understand the field of battle, or you can fully understand your opponent, what they're doing or when they do it, right? And that's not just in fighting. That's in strategy. It's in business strategy. It's in dealing with family member strategy. It's a clever concept in terms of thinking about those elements. And then the way of the sword, the idea that the pursuit of martial arts should be a lifelong journey of learning and self-improvement. He believed that this was the key to success in combat, in all life, honestly, as it allowed the martial artists to continually improve and adapt to changing circumstances around them. He wrote, "The way of the sword is not just about mastering a particular technique or style. It is about constantly seeking to improve and grow as a martial artist. It is about never being satisfied with your current level of skill and always striving to become better. The way of the sword is a lifelong journey, and those who follow it will find that they are always learning and growing." So, we call, what does the Mandalorian say? This is the way, say the way of the sword. We, in karate, we call it, it's the path, or the code, or whatever. We speak about these things a lot, and it is that, kaizen or whatever concept that you want to sort of materialize this with. But Musashi called it the way of the sword. But this idea that we're constantly evolving, we're constantly working on our skills, we're constantly working on who we are as a person. If Tu Lam spoke about that, right? If you attempt something, if you try something new, or you try a new business, or you do something, and if it doesn't succeed fully, but you learn from it, then you didn't fail, We only fail when we quit, when we walk away from something because we just don't want to persevere. That's when we lose. And that's what that means. And in Musashi's world, he calls it the way of the sword. Pretty badass, actually. The final concept is really the overarching concept, but the 5 rings, right? The way he broke this up, the 5 elements of strategy: earth, water, fire, wind, and then void. And conveniently, not conveniently, but interestingly enough, that void, that is also the first character in karate do. It's that concept of you can sort of look at it, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but it's like like elements hitting an anvil or whatever. So it's that moment of nothing but but also not just nothing, but also potential at the same time. Empty hand, however you want to look at that. I think that's fascinating. The concept of the 5 rings is the idea that there are 5 elements of strategy that are essential to success in martial arts: earth, fire, wind, void. Earth, water, fire, wind, and void. In the Book of 5 Rings, they each represent different aspects of combat. You think like art of war type thing, but a lot simpler. The book really outlines this approach outlines different aspects that you should work on in order to be really truly skilled martial artist. You must study each and every one independently and then all together again with the void. From a combat perspective, they're broken down into physical aspects: strength, endurance, technique. Here you go. The water is the source of life and represents the mental aspects of combat, such as strategy, tactics, and awareness. Fire is the source of power, represents spiritual aspects of combat, such as courage, determination, resolve. Wind is the messenger, represents social aspects of combat, such as leadership, teamwork, and communication, etc. We talked a lot about void. So that overall, the way that he broke it down, and again, here's that whole video from Tulam. It's a good one, and really worthy of taking your time and studying. So there you go. That's my top 5 parts, my top 5 concepts or whatever that come from Musashi's Book of 5 Rings. I highly recommend you get a copy of it for yourself and spend some time with it, and also research him outside of that book. You will not be let down. You will become a better martial artist. You will become a better person from it. I promise. So thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you get something out of it. And until next time, get after it, y'all.